Hello, my name is John Bannon. I'm an attorney and philosopher. In today's video, I'm going to explain how superdeterminism destroys Gilles Deleuze. This video is what they failed to teach you in college philosophy class about the philosophy of Deleuze. When I talk about superdeterminism, I'm referring to a very specific, unique version of superdeterminism called Hansonian superdeterminism. It's based on a proof by Swedish theoretical physicist Dr. Johan Hansen, published in the peer-reviewed journal Physics Essays, volume 33, number 2, June of 2020. It starts on page 216, ends on page 218, is entitled Bell's Theorem and its Tests, Proof that Nature is Superdeterministic, Not Random. So Hansonian superdeterminism says that we live in a static block universe without cause and effect in physics, or physical causation, or probabilistic causation. This is different than classic superdeterminism, first posited by Dr. John Bell in 1985, because classic superdeterminism uses hidden causal variables. Because Dr. Hansen disproved causation, a Hansonian superdeterminism cannot rely on hidden causal variables. Rather, it relies on the lack of physical causation to say that we live in a static block universe that consists of particles that are fixed like pebbles in concrete through the static dimension of time. Um, Everything that happens is predetermined. The past, present, and future are equally real and still exist as we speak in this fourth dimensional static block universe. And you can't change it without cause and effect in physics, and it is permanent. Now, these particle positions through the static dimension of time form patterns, and we describe those patterns using mathematical laws of physics. So I've listed 5 points of Deleuze's philosophy on the board, and I'm going to show you how each one is disproven by superdeterminism. Number 5, no objective morals. However, under Hansonian superdeterminism, everything in the universe is predetermined, all events, including our thoughts and the things that are written down. They still exist. Consciousness is a physical reality and an aspect of the physical static block universe, including all human thoughts in human history on God and religion and Christianity. Now, the reason for this is that in a predetermined static block universe, the future is predetermined. So everything that happens in the future already exists in the dimension of time, in a future location of the dimension of time, and it cannot be changed without cause and effect in physics. So, for instance, if you decide to move your arm because your arm is a physical reality, then it is predetermined that your arm will move in the future. So your future arm movement exists in the future dimension of time. But if you consciously decide to move your arm, your conscious decision to move your arm must also be predetermined in order for your future arm movement to be predetermined. So your consciousness has to be an aspect of the predetermined static block universe. Now, the only thing that physically exists where our conscious thoughts exist is brain particles, which means that the predetermined arrangement of brain particles through the static dimension of time is what must leads to our predetermined conscious experience. Um, it's a mystery as to how an immaterial thing like consciousness could be a physical thing, but it has to be because it has to be predetermined and an aspect of the predetermined block universe. If I were to guess as to why an immaterial thing can be a physical thing, it's because the arrangement of brain particles creates a different form of logic in its arrangement, which I call the logic of the possible. And because this logic has to have its reality in order to be real, then consciousness is this reality of the logic of the possible. Now, for instance, if you think about the universe can be described by mathematical laws of physics. Math is logic. So fundamentally, physical reality is logic. So logic does have a physical reality associated with it. So if you have a different form of logic, the logic of the possible in the arrangement of brain particles, then it too can have its own form of reality, which we experience as an immaterial consciousness. So because God atemporally created our static block universe, then God predetermined Christianity to be the predominant world religion based on the total number of members throughout history. From that, you can reasonably infer that God intended Christian morality to be the objective message and truth God is giving humanity. Therefore, you can reasonably infer that Christian morals are objective because God gave them to us. Number four, God is an absolute infinite substance. In other words, Deleuze was saying that everything that exists is merely a mode or expression of this single immanent reality. However, uh, God cannot be a physical substance. And the reason is because physical reality as a block universe doesn't have cause and effect in physics in it, which means there's no actual power to change anything in the block universe. And because God is a creator of the block universe, he has to have the power to create physical reality. God is omnipotent, not a powerless aspect of the block universe. So God cannot be a physical substance. Number three, no universal truths because only senses and values currently occupy the mind. So Deleuze's idea here is that there can be no universal truths because the things that we think about as true are fleeting. Um, they occupy our senses and our mind for only a moment and then they're gone. So, how could they be universal truths? Um, so, if they're here today and gone tomorrow, then it's not a permanent universal truth. So, what you think is a universal truth can't be. However, under Hansonian superdeterminism, our conscious thoughts, including our conscious thoughts about truth, are actually physical realities in a permanent static block universe. Conscious thoughts about truth are physical aspects of a permanent block universe. And therefore, our thoughts about truth are actually permanent aspects of the block universe. And the block universe is permanent and it can present universal truths, both about itself and metaphysical aspects about why it exists or where it came from. So, uh, the static block universe, because it's permanent, does allow for the exhibition of universal truths. Number two, sorry. Meaning of life is a task of creation. So Deleuze believed that the meaning of your life is uh, to create through your experience of life. However, creation is an impossibility for any physical being. And the reason is because creation requires cause and effect in physics. Um, because there's no cause and effect in physics in the block universe, you cannot actually create anything that isn't already there in the predetermined future in the static dimension of time of the block. So that can't possibly be the meaning of life. It's an impossibility. Number one, the best life is experimental living. So Deleuze thought that the best way to live was experimental living against convention. In other words, to have a more intense experience of life. However, under Hansonian superdeterminism, uh, the intensity of which you live your life is not a greater exercise of the becoming of the present into the next moment of time, because there is no becoming of the next moment of time without cause and effect in physics. Uh, the future and everything you do in the future is already predetermined, and it already exists in the static dimension of time. There is no becoming. So the intensity to which you live doesn't create a greater becoming for you because there is no becoming under Hansonian superdeterminism. Um, so a more intense form of living, if you do that, is already what you're predetermined to do because the future is closed and it's predetermined and you can't change it. So there isn't any essential difference in conventional living versus unconventional living that makes unconventional living any better as far in itself as far as a predetermined static block universe goes. All right, well, I hope you learned something, and I'll give you a second to read the board. All right, until next time, take care.